Someone trapped your family member and doing this to their legs. Archangel Michael says the hour is thinner than a thread and the air around your name has started to glow. He says a shadow with cold hands is circling your house, whispering a plan that was never meant to reach your ears. He says a member of your family is trapped, and the first thing the captor touched were their legs. The chain is not only iron, it is intention, and intention can bite deeper than steel. The room where they are kept smells like dust and a recently snuffed candle. On the floor, chalk lines mark where pacing has worn the patience of the trapped into grooves. A radio murmurs low in that room, like a voice trying to be smaller than it is. The captor likes to think the radio hides the shiver of fear, but even the radio cannot swallow such sounds. Your name moves through those waves like lightning underwater. A chair is tipped sideways near the corner, as if someone tried to stand and the floor tilted against them. Their legs ache because the rope bites in two places, above the ankle and just below the knee. The captor believes that taking the legs weakens the spirit, but Michael says the captor has never met a soul trained to fly. You wake at 3:11 with the aftertaste of iron on your tongue. The dream did not end when your eyes opened, it simply stepped into the room ahead of you. On the window, a breath-fogged message clears into 3 words: listen, then move. You walk the hallway and count 9 steps, because 9 is the number you learned to trust when everything else felt like a lie. On the 10th, the wood speaks with a sigh and you remember the old stories your grandmother told about houses that warn their people. Your phone lights without a ring and shows a location you do not recognize. The pin lands between the old rail yard and the last working street lamp on Harrow Road. You know that lamp. It flickers on during storms and during secrets. Tonight it will not flicker for the weather. Michael leans like light against your shoulder and places a single picture in your mind. It is a brass tag with the number 47 pressed into it, and the hole at the top is worn from a keyring that used to sing. He says you will see that tag hanging from a nail, and beneath the nail will be the first answer. You dress quickly, not with panic, but with precision. There is no room in this hour for fear shaped like noise. The shoes you choose do not squeak, because silence will be your first ally. The night outside carries conversations it stole from doors not fully closed. Tires whisper down a far road and a dog coughs like a warning trying to become a bark. Your breath steadies into the cadence of someone who intends to come back with another heartbeat in their hands. At the corner, a small wind moves the pages of a free newspaper inside its metal box. Headlines speak about markets and weather and the mayor's parade, but your eyes find a smaller column about a missing briefcase. Whoever wrote the column thinks it is about money. You know it is about leverage. The street lamp on Harrow Road looks less like light and more like a witness. It hums the way old things hum when they are tired of being ignored. Beneath it, the pavement remembers footprints by how long the heat lingers. You kneel and touch the ground with 3 fingers, listening like a scout who learned patience in another lifetime. The warmth tells you 2 people stood here an hour ago, and one of them leaned harder on their left foot. Someone dragged something that did not want to be dragged. Along the fence, a glint hides in a knot of weeds that have learned the names of many lost objects. You pull a thin ribbon of reflective tape that smells faintly of lemon polish and basement. On the tape, written with a dull marker, is the word North. Michael tells you the captor is someone who loves maps more than people. He says this person believes that a maze can break a promise. He says this person is wrong. You head north and pass a building that used to be a bakery before time took the morning out of it. The sign still carries the outline of a loaf, and in the dust on the window someone wrote, "Open soon, 2 winters ago." Hope ages slowly in some neighborhoods, but it never rots. At the alley mouth, a shopping cart waits with one wheel lifted like a question it cannot ask. In the child's seat, there is a small tin with a toothpick stuck through the lid. Inside the tin, you find a strip of fabric that matches the collar of your family member's coat. The fabric is clean, too clean, as if someone washed away the truth and left only the color. The toothpick smells like cinnamon gum, cheap and sharp. The captor wants you to taste the trail and hurry. You do not hurry. You let urgency become clarity instead of chaos. You make the night slow down until it has no choice but to tell you where it hurts. A cat appears on a dumpster and blinks with the indifference of creatures who have seen too much. It stretches and points its tail toward a staircase that descends under a shuttered thrift store. The second step is cracked. You take it lightly and it holds. In the basement corridor, you feel the magnet of something metal and mean. Your fingers brush a latch that has been opened by hands that count their seconds. Past the door, the air cools, which means the room beyond has no windows worth speaking of. You enter and find the brass tag, number 47, hanging from a nail as promised. Beneath it, mashed into soft chalkboard paint, are 3 initials that used to sit next to yours on a school sign-in sheet. You realize the captor is not a stranger to your past. They are a stranger to their own heart. There is a hum here, but it is not the lamp this time. It is a small camera tucked inside a broken smoke detector, its red eye like a freckle that grew proud. You tilt it toward the wall and speak softly. You do not make the rules tonight. The chair in the room is empty, which tells you this place is not the destination but the rehearsal. Rope fragments dot the floor like punctuation marks in a letter that never learned mercy. Scuff marks on the concrete say someone practiced dragging a weight. On the table, a page from a car manual is torn where the diagram of a seatbelt would be. Someone has circled the part where the belt locks under sudden pressure. The captor thinks symbolism is strategy. Michael calls it vanity dressed as cleverness. You find another message scratched under the table lip where hands have searched for help. It reads, "Not here, downstream." There is a thin blue chalk line pointing to a door that smells like river air and false confidence. You step into a tunnel that once carried laughter from a neighboring bar, back when music was the most dangerous thing that happened on this block. The walls are damp with condensation and old arguments. Your footsteps speak a new language of intention against the concrete. At the end of the tunnel, you emerge on a service road that runs along the river like a side note to the city. Bats part the air with invisible signatures, and a freighter horn drags its sound across the water like a heavy coat. Michael nods toward the left, where a bend in the road hides a half-collapsed boathouse. The boathouse roof sags like a memory that stayed up too late. A chain hangs on the door, looped but not locked, the lazy arrogance of someone who thinks their face is invisible. You lift the chain, and the door complains in a voice it learned from storms. Inside, The smell of rope and gasoline burns a path to your throat. You see the chair again, but this time it is not a prop, it is the heart of the room. The ropes are fresh, frayed ends crisp, and in the center of the seat is a single coin pressed into a strip of duct tape. The coin is foreign, minted in a year that mattered to your family in a quiet way. You close your hand around it and heat crawls to your skin like courage given a shape. Under the chair is a paper tag that says, "Staging Area," and you hate that term for how proud it is of its own cruelty. You hear it then, shoe rubber sliding on old wood, a sound too careful to be innocent. The captor is close, circling the boathouse perimeter, checking their own traps like a fisherman who carries more hooks than heart. Michael moves between you and the sound, a shield you cannot see but can trust. The figure passes by a slatted window and the shadow tells you more than a face would. Average height, right shoulder dipped from an old injury, a step that tries not to limp. The captor believes that hiding weakness makes them strong, you know it makes them less human. On a beam, there is a line of tally marks carved into the grain. Someone has practiced patience here, counting days or rehearsals or sins. Beneath the beam, tucked in a sealed jar, is a folded map with 3 red dots in a rough triangle. If the boathouse is the first, then the second dot sits inland near the old substation, and the third is deeper still, a place where the city forgets to send trash trucks. Michael taps the third dot and says the legs are there, their circulation slowed, their strength insulted, but their will unbroken. He says you will need to choose the quiet path, not the quick one. You leave with the coin in your pocket and the map beneath your shirt. You leave the chain hanging the way you found it, because the captor trusts their own theater. Outside, the river carries moonlight like a promise that refuses to sink. The road to the substation is a corridor of rust and weeds. Fences gape where once they bit, and warning signs have become decoration for basements and bars. On the breeze, you taste electricity the way some people taste rain. A gate yawns and you ease through, thanking hinges that knew when to retire. The yard is a chessboard of concrete pads and pillars. A geometry lesson nobody wanted. You stay along the edges where shadows are older and thus kinder. On the far wall of the control building, you find a smear of chalk in the shape of an arrow. It points not to the door, but to a narrow gap where 2 panels failed to meet. You slip sideways, listening to your heartbeat adapt to the size of the space. Inside is not a room but a throat of a building, a passage that teaches you how to be thin. You move without rubbing the walls, without letting your breath scrape the edges. When you emerge, you are behind the control room where the glass is mirrored from the other side. Through the glass, you see a figure at a table arranging 8 items like letters in a cruel alphabet. A roll of duct tape, a medical bandage, a pair of shears, a half-empty bottle of water, a packet of hand warmers, a plastic wristband, a small metronome, and a dot of red nail polish. The metronome clicks like a clock trying to become a heartbeat. You read the ritual in a second. Immobilize, label, time, reward, confuse, claim, and repeat. You understand the legs are the first chapter because the captor thinks motion is identity. Michael whispers that their theory collapses when confronted by soul. The control room has a second door, one that opens to a catwalk and then to a stairwell that tastefully forgets to creak. You take it down and find yourself at the rear of the building where the motor pool would have once idled. The night holds its breath, as if aware of your next move in a way that feels like respect. Past the substation, the third dot waits in a low gully that used to collect rain before the city rerouted its memory. The place is called Stillwater by people who like to rename things once the danger leaves. The danger never left, it just traded its uniform. You approach by the back trail where milkweed leans in to bless your sleeves with seeds you will carry elsewhere. The earth here is stubborn with clay, and your sols learn to negotiate rather than demand. In the hollow, a double-door cellar mouth leans open like a secret that pretended to be tired and then remembered its job. You step down and the world compresses to the smell of damp wood and the murmur of a small generator. The sound of breathing rides along the floor like mist, and in that sound is the rhythm of the person you came for. The ropes hold their legs to the chair, but the light in their eyes is its own. Unlocked door. You speak their name in a tone you reserve for true things. You tell them you came in time, because you did, and that the night has already started to heal. You kneel and check the knots with swift hands that learned rescue the same day they learned love. The ropes show the signature of someone who ties for pride rather than function. You do not untie, you cut, because time is a currency you will not spend on the captor's ego. The shears in your pocket answer like faithful old friends. As the rope falls, color returns to their feet in a blush that chooses to believe in blood again. You rub their calves with the warmth the room refused to offer. You slide the hand warmers under the heels because a steady thaw is smarter than a sudden blaze. In the corner, a camera blinks to remind you the captor wanted to be here without being here. You look at it, and you say, "We see you, not to hate but to end the game." You take the metronome from your own pocket and set it on the table, letting its calm click replace the one the captor left behind. They try to stand and the world wobbles, because circulation is a negotiation too. You shoulder their weight and make a bridge of your posture. Michael folds his wings around both of you in the kind of silence that answers questions you never spoke. Outside, the moon has moved 2 finger widths higher than where you started, which is how you know victory takes time but not forever. Fireflies mark the exit path like small lanterns with excellent manners. The river sends up one cool breath that feels like applause. You do not run, because running would be a song the captor wants to dance to. You move at a pace that says the ending has already unfolded in your favor. Every step you take writes over the chalk marks of earlier rehearsals. At the edge of the gully, you hear a foot scuff and then the false bravado of a cough. The captor steps into view and the night pretends not to notice, because the night prefers to honor the bigger work. Their eyes carry the shock of someone who expected to be the only one writing the script. You say their name, and their name sounds smaller outside than it did in their head. You say it again, and this time it carries the weight of a boundary you have already enforced. You do not threaten, you inform. They speak about reasons and debts and myths about you they taught themselves when kindness frightened them. They speak about legs because legs make them feel like they know how to control a story. You allow them their last monologue because the air enjoys collecting endings. Michael moves between the words and chooses the ones that deserve to live. He binds nothing and releases much. He says this, harm ends here, and the echo of that line ricochets through your bones like a promise. You guide your family member into the city light where witnesses live. The captor remains in the hollow, suddenly aware of how many stars know what they have done. Justice is already wise to the path, and you will not need to walk it alone. At home, the first chair you offer is not to sit in, but to lean on. Legs like to remember their jobs in increments. You bring warm water and cloths and the good blanket, because rescue extends beyond the room where the rope fell. Morning is slow and kind, which is exactly how morning should report for duty after a night like that. Birds gossip the sun into confidence, and the kettle tries to sing louder than them. Your family member sleeps and wakes and sleeps again, a tide reclaiming its coastline. When they finally speak, the words arrive with the steadiness of someone who crossed a narrow bridge without looking down. They tell you about the chalk lines and the coin and the metronome, all the amateur signatures of someone who confused control with care. They tell you how they waited, not by shrinking, but by gathering themselves like a fist turning into an open hand. You listen with the patience of a lighthouse. You mark each detail because details are how we teach fear that it does not own the archives. When they finish, silence arrives not as a void but as a full room where gratitude sits down. Michael places the brass tag 47 on your kitchen table like a metal pulled from a storm. He tells you the number will keep no more doors closed. He says he will stay by the window until the air no longer tastes like last night. You step outside to tell the street the truth, because streets carry secrets far and sometimes bring them home again. The lamp on Harrow Road does not flicker, it burns steady like a witness who is finally comfortable testifying. A neighbor nods with the calm of someone who does not need all the details to recognize a rescue. You return inside and make a room within the room where only softness is allowed. Feet on pillows, calves warmed slowly, hips aligned so the lower back does not volunteer for pain it did not cause. You learn how to lift without straining and how to listen for the small ache that speaks before the big one shouts. The evening finds you with a list that is more ceremony than chore. You write, replace locks, and call the friend who always picks up, and plant milkweed by the back fence because the seeds asked for it. You add, teach the house new sounds, as if that is a normal entry, because in homes like yours that line makes perfect sense. The days that follow do not pretend to be ordinary, they simply refuse to be afraid. You walk together, first to the end of the street, then around the block, then to where the bakery sign still holds its breath. Legs recover not just strength but confidence, and confidence is a kind of balance that belongs to the entire body. Messages arrive from people who do not know exactly what happened but feel the earth has shifted slightly toward mercy. They bring soup, and laughter, and a willingness to sit without making the hour louder than it needs to be. Your home learns the sound of safe. You keep the coin on the mantel, not as a trophy of harm, but as a receipt for the bill you refuse to pay. You keep the map folded beneath it like a promise to never again let triangles pretend they are cages. You keep the metronome because its click now marks rest rather than countdown. One night, when the house is a soft ship floating on the ocean of its own quiet, you sit with Michael by the window he promised to guard. He points with his chin at the street where the lamp hums like a cat and the road breathes like an animal that has chosen to be kind. He says, the lesson was never about legs. It was about motion, yes, but also about what moves you when you cannot move yourself. It was about the arms that carried, the voice that steadied, the choice to turn urgency into clarity. It was about how rescue is not a single moment but a corridor of them. You write a new ritual for the house, one that involves tea and music played quietly enough for the floorboards to feel included. You write a new map that has no red dots, only blue circles marking places where you felt strengthened. You tuck these pages where future fear cannot find them. When you finally sleep deeply, the dream returns, but it has learned new manners. The iron taste is gone, replaced by the sweetness of something unnamed and friendly. The room you saw in your first vision now holds a chair with a blanket draped across it, and the chalk lines have been washed away. Days later, Justice knocks with a steady hand and a folder of truths collected by those who believe documents can be weapons for good. You sign what needs signing and say what needs saying. You do not look back as you leave the building because the forward road has earned your attention. You return to the river and stand by the boathouse that tried to learn humility and is still practicing. The chain is gone now, replaced by a lock that only opens for people who speak kindly to structures. You bless the wood, not with words, but with your presence that refuses to let old harm colonize new hours. In the end, the story does not belong to the captor who loved maps more than humans. It belongs to the way you learned to move when movement was a promise you had to make in pieces. It belongs to legs held, then freed, then taught how to trust land again. You keep walking, but you also keep listening. You listen for rooms that still speak chalk, for lamps that still hum witness, for radios that try to hide fear beneath old songs. You listen because hearing is part of rescue, and you have become very, very good at rescue. Tonight, the sky hangs low and friendly, and the neighborhood knows your pace by heart. Michael's hand is light on your shoulder, not a weight, just a note pinned to your jacket that says, "You did not come this far to doubt what you already proved." Your family sleeps, legs warm and unafraid, and the house breathes gratitude. If new storms come, they will find a door that knows how to be strong politely. If new shadows try to teach fear a new language, they will discover you have already become bilingual in courage and calm. The metronome on the mantel ticks like a heartbeat that chose to become a clock so it could organize peace. You pour water into the soil of a plant that once almost gave up and now insists on thriving near the laughter from the kitchen. You gather the coin, the tag, and the folded map and set them in a box labeled, "Closed Lessons." You place the box on a high shelf, not out of reach, but out of power. A soft rain begins, the sort that convinces rooftops to write poetry in their downspouts. You open the window just enough for the room to remember it is part of weather that does not threaten. You thank the night without speaking, and the night nods back. Tomorrow will bring new errands that are only errands and not disguises for emergencies. Shoes will squeak because they are allowed to again, and you will not mind. The lamp on Harrow Road will hum like a friend telling a joke only you can hear. When you turn off the lights, the house does not flinch. It knows now that darkness is not a promise of harm but a canvas for rest. Michael watches you cross the room and says without words that the world is better because you chose to move. Sleep leans in like a trusted ally, the kind who never asks you to be smaller than your courage. The last thing you feel is the steady warmth along your calves, a reminder that the body keeps a record of mercy too. The last thing you hear is a clock that used to be a metronome, keeping time for a home that finally knows how to keep itself. In the morning, all the doors open with the sound of agreement. The floorboards greet your steps not with creaks but with quiet applause. The kettle sings an ordinary song, and ordinary has never sounded so holy. You step outside, breathe the good air, and let the day see your face. People will go about their lives, unaware of the night that quietly turned a corner on your street. That is fine. Heroism prefers to be a rumor in neighborhoods that choose to be gentle. And if ever the world tries to replay that old theater with new actors, you will be ready with better lighting, better exits, and better friends. You will be ready with wings you learned to borrow when your feet needed time. You will be ready with a map that only points home. The house, the lamp, the river, the road, they have learned your name as a synonym for safe. Michael has learned that he can rest for a while by your window without checking the horizon every 10 minutes. Your family has learned that legs can forgive ropes and still remember to dance. There will be music again, the kind that invites chairs to scoot without anxiety. There will be afternoons where shadows mean shade and nothing else. There will be evenings where the only ritual is laughter. When the day winds down, you take the metronome from the mantel and wind it once. Its steady tick does not count down, it counts up, keeping time for a life rethreaded with patience. You smile because patience finally feels like a gift instead of a chore. You whisper, "We made it," and the house answers with a settling sigh that means contentment. You touch the window frame where Michael leaned his promise. The wood is warm, as if light wrote its name there and decided to stay. If anyone asks later how the rescue happened, you will say it happened the way most rescues happen. It happened by listening and by moving, by refusing the theater of fear and choosing the architecture of care. It happened because love learned to walk on every part of the body, not only the legs. And the world will nod, because the world understands a good story when it hears one told without vanity. The world will send you small signs when it thinks you could use them, an unexpected seat on a bus, a stranger holding a door, a lamp that burns steady through a storm. You will collect these signs the way a child collects bright stones, not for value, but for joy. Life goes on, not as an apology for what happened, but as a declaration that the story refuses to fold into fear. Each step your family takes now is an essay on recovery written in motion. Each rest is a signature of wisdom, proving that stillness can be brave too. You understand that what the captor meant to break has become a hinge. You understand that what they meant to silence has learned to speak fluently in quiet rooms. You understand that your home is now a lighthouse to which even your neighbors will steer without knowing why. When the moon climbs again and the lamp hums its hymn, you will not be counting hours. You will be gathering them, generous and open, like bowls set on a table for friends who have not arrived yet but will. You will be ready, because you know now what to do with the night. And somewhere, in a ledger kept by hands kinder than law and stronger than fear, a line has been drawn. It separates those who bind from those who unbind, those who hoard power from those who share it, those who cloak themselves in ritual from those who make rituals into rescue. Your name sits proudly where it belongs. The house sleeps. The feet rest. The future writes itself steadily, one step at a time, across a floor that finally trusts every footfall it receives. If you wish to express your support further, you have the option to give super thanks, with contributions of up to $20.